This story is based on a real police incident report from 2018. Names have been removed and the location has been sealed. If you've ever stayed at a roadside motel in the United States, those cheap rooms, the flickering lights, the long empty highways, then you need to listen carefully, because some motels don't just rent rooms, they collect people. It was 11:38 p.m. when a man named Daniel Harper pulled his car off Highway 50 in the middle of rural Utah. The engine was overheating, his phone had no signal, and there wasn't a town for miles. The only sign of life was an old, run-down roadside motel. A neon sign buzzed faintly, spelling out vacancy, but one of the letters kept flickering on and off. Lights were on in some of the rooms, but the parking lot was completely empty. It felt wrong, but he had no other choice. Inside, the air was heavy and smelled of old things. Dust, mold, and something else. Something faintly metallic, like old blood. Behind the front desk stood a man in his late 60s. He just stared without blinking, without smiling. He didn't move a muscle until Daniel finally spoke up to ask for a room. Before Daniel could even finish his sentence, the clerk slid a tarnished brass key across the counter, room 6. The strange thing was, Daniel hadn't even told him he wanted a room yet. As Daniel reached for the key, the old clerk finally spoke. His voice was raspy, like dry leaves skittering across pavement. Checkout is at 6:00 a.m. sharp. He then leaned in closer, his eyes wide, and whispered, "If you hear knocking after midnight, don't open the door." Daniel let out a nervous laugh. That was a mistake. The clerk's face didn't change, but the air in the room grew colder. He found room 6 at the end of a long, dimly lit hallway. The room was clean, almost unnaturally clean. There was no dust on the furniture, no scuff marks on the floor, no sign that anyone had ever stayed there before. The television was already on, displaying nothing but buzzing static. Daniel glanced at the old digital clock on the bedside table. It read 12:01 a.m. He watched it for a moment, waiting for the numbers to change. But they didn't. The clock was frozen. At exactly 12:17 a.m., it began. A soft knock at the door. Slow, deliberate. 3 taps. Daniel froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't expecting anyone. A woman's voice, trembling and weak, came through the door. "Please, I think I'm in the wrong room. Can you help me?" Cautiously, Daniel crept to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was completely empty. There was no one there, and just as suddenly as it started, the knocking stopped. He backed away from the door, trying to rationalize what just happened. That's when the television clicked. The screen of static suddenly cleared, replaced by a grainy, black and white image. It was a security camera feed of his room. He could see himself sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the screen. Then, on the television, a second Daniel appeared. It walked into frame and stood right behind him, a wide, unnatural smile stretched across its face. The real Daniel spun around. There was nobody there. He looked back at the TV. Both figures were gone, replaced by static. He glanced at the clock. It still read 12:17 a.m. The second knock was nothing like the first. It was violent, a frantic banging that shook the entire door in its frame. This time, a familiar voice echoed from the hallway. The clerk. "Open the door. It's checkout time." Daniel screamed, scrambling backward until his back hit the far wall. The clerk's voice was distorted, angry. As Daniel stared at the rattling door, the light in the bathroom flickered on by itself. He glanced toward the open doorway and saw the bathroom mirror. Reflected in it wasn't his own face. It was someone else staring back. Someone older, much paler, with hollow eyes, waiting. Panic finally set in. Daniel fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking. For a split second, a single bar of signal appeared. A web page that had been trying to load earlier suddenly flashed onto the screen. It was a local news article. The headline read, "Motel closed after 23 guests vanish minus 1,986. The article featured a photo of the very motel he was in, the same front desk, the same creepy clerk, frozen in time. And there, circled in red ink on the photo, was the key for room 6. He looked at the clock again. The numbers suddenly jumped from 12:17 to 5:59 a.m. A wave of sound washed over him. Footsteps, dozens of them, shuffling and dragging in the hallway outside. He heard the squeal of rusty hinges as every single door on the hall opened at once. Whispers flooded the room from all directions, weaving together into a single, horrifying sentence. Time to stay. He stared at his door as the lock began to turn. Slowly, click. At 7:20 a.m., a state trooper was dispatched to investigate a broken-down vehicle on Highway 50. He found Daniel Dess' car parked neatly in the motel lot, its engine cold to the touch. The trooper went inside to investigate. The motel was silent and empty. In room 6, the bed was perfectly made. Everything was clean. On the desk lay the key to the room, and next to it, the old guest log was open to a new page. A fresh entry, written in neat cursive, read, "Daniel Harper, checked in," but the space for his checkout time was blank. So, if you ever find yourself on a lonely highway late at night and you stop at a roadside motel where the clerk gives you a room before you even ask for one, check the clock on the nightstand, listen for the knocking after midnight, and if checkout time comes and goes, but you're still there, you're no longer a guest. You're part of the collection. Thanks for watching. If you like stories that keep you up at night, make sure you subscribe. You never know what's waiting down the next dark road.